It's very important for us to allow Christmas to do its work and to be about right now. Not just about something that happened 2,000 years ago, but about something that is going on right now. In the early 90s, two American education experts came to Russia on the invitation of the Russian government so that they could work in the schools there. And during their free time, they wanted to volunteer. So they went to an orphanage that was very large. The orphanage had over 100 kids living there, none of whom had parents, none of whom had a home. And they would spend time with them, tell them stories. At Christmas time, they were invited to come and tell Christmas stories. So they went and told the story that we just heard. And the kids had never heard it before, so they told every detail. About how Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, about how there was no room at the inn, and they had to go out to the barn in the back, about how Jesus was born that night and put into a feeding trough for animals. And then they had a little craft project for the kids. They brought simple things for them to use, little pieces of cardboard for the manger, and yellow napkins that they could cut up to make the straw out of, little pieces of flannel for the blanket, and little pieces of tan felt to make baby Jesus out of. And the kids got right to work. They were walking around and looking at what the kids were doing, and one little boy, little 6-year-old Misha, had 2 babies in his manger. And they didn't understand what that was all about, so they called a translator over, and they asked Misha through the translator, "Why are there 2 babies in the manger?" And he started telling them the story, exactly as they had told him, as if they'd never heard it before, about how Mary and Joseph had to go to Bethlehem, there was no room in the inn, and so they had to go out back to the stable, and Jesus was born and put into the manger. But when he got to that point, he started to ad-lib a little bit. And he said, "I was there in the stable too." And Jesus looked over at me and asked if I was going to go home. And I told him, "I don't have a home because I don't have a mommy or a daddy." And so Jesus told me that I could stay in the manger with him. And then I felt badly because I didn't have a gift to give him like the 3 kings had. So I said, "Jesus, if I keep you warm all night, could that be my gift to you?" And he said, "If you keep me warm all night, that would be the best gift anyone has ever given me." And then he said, "Jesus told me that I could stay with him forever." Little 6-year-old Misha gets it. He understands that Christmas is not a story from history. The very first day he heard the story, he knew it was about him, and it was about his struggles. Christmas is the proof for us that God wants to be close to us. Christmas proves it. God wants to be right here with us in everything. And God always did, but we didn't make it very easy. Before the time of Jesus, God had tried many other ways to be close to us, and none of them worked. When we would see God appearing in a burning bush, we'd be like, "Ugh, get away." If God appeared in a sign in the sky, or if God spoke to the prophets, we didn't want to hear the voice of God, and we didn't want to hear the prophets either. We stayed far away. Anytime God showed up, we were afraid. It reminds me of some friends of mine who got 2 long-eared rabbits this summer. And when I went over to their house to meet these rabbits, all I wanted to do was cuddle these little guys. But they would have none of it. Anytime I went near their cage, I just wanted to scratch behind their ears and just cuddle with them. No, they went to the back of the cage, they trembled, they looked at me like I was going to hurt them. I said, "I'm not here to hurt you," but they didn't understand. That's exactly how we've been with God through all the ages. God wants to come close, wants to help us, but we don't want any part of it. So God said, "I know, if I come as a baby, no one can feel threatened by a baby. If I come as a baby, then everyone will know that I'm completely non-threatening. In fact, a baby is dependent on everyone else. Isn't that incredible to think about? God chose to come down and become dependent on a human mother. She taught God how to walk and how to talk. She changed Jesus' diapers. A human woman. God didn't have to do that. That was a great choice, a great act of love to be close to us. We call Jesus the Good Shepherd, and he is. But at Christmas, we remember that the Good Shepherd became one of the sheep. So there is nothing that can happen to this flock that the shepherd doesn't understand. Everything that we go through, anything that we ever could go through, God gets it. God understands it. And that's what little Misha understood. But we need to know that too. There are people here this morning who have been through something excruciating this year. There are people here who have been through something very difficult. They didn't think they could make it to Christmas. And Christmas reminds us that God gets it. God knows what that pain is. God did not hold back. God knows what pain is like. There are people here who maybe have a loved one who's suffering from an addiction, and they're worried that their life is going to be lost through this problem. Or maybe you have an addiction yourself, and you know you're on a bad path, but you feel powerless to change it. God knows and understands exactly that, knows what you're carrying. There are people in our parish whose marriages are falling apart right now, and they wonder if this will be the last Christmas that they're together as a family. God gets it. God understands it, is with us in it. There's people who struggle with depression or anxiety. They're overwhelmed by things happening in their lives. God gets that too. Christmas is the proof that God understands and wants to be close to us. Whenever we gather at Christmas, we sing songs that are in the worship aid, but we almost don't need it because we know them all by heart. We know the lyrics to these songs by heart because every year we come back to remember that vision that God wants to be close to us, came to be with us. But my favorite Christmas song, we're not going to sing this morning. It's in Italian, which is not a language I speak, but I was taught what these words mean, and I just can't believe how beautiful it is. If you have Italian ancestry, maybe you'll remember a grandparent singing this song sometime in your childhood. The song is Tu scende dalle stelle, o Re del cielo. God of the stars, you came down to be with us here on earth. You're the God of the heavens, but you came down from your lofty spot to be with us. And later, my favorite line is, Hai quanto ti costò la fermi amato, which means, I look at you trembling in the cold night in your manger bed. Oh my God, what it cost you to love me. I look at you freezing, coming down from heaven where things were perfect, to this. And I see you trembling. What it cost you to love me. And we know that Christmas was just the beginning. The price that God was willing to pay was much higher than what happened in the stable that night. So Christmas is about God coming close, but the actual historical Christmas doesn't hold a candle to what we're going to experience in just a few minutes. Because through this incredible miracle, God has given us a way to be even closer than Mary and Joseph were on Christmas. He's going to become present to us in bread and wine, and we are going to be able to take him into us. And he is going to break down and go into our bloodstream. And he is going to go into our hair follicles, and into our nail beds, and into our skin, and every organ, and every cell. We're going to carry him out with us. And he gets it. He's going to be part of everything. He's going to be there for everything that we face. That's why it's so important that we come together here. Because church is like a big campaign headquarters. That's why it's decorated like this. People worked really hard to make it this beautiful. But it's important to them to do it because this is campaign headquarters where we come and remember that God wants to be close to us, that God didn't come here to condemn us. God came here to save us. And so it's important that we gather in a beautiful church and that we sing those familiar songs and we remember that God gets it. God really gets it. Christmas is the proof of that. Merry Christmas.